There has been an admission from this man, now the Shadow Home Secretary, that back when Britain left the European Union in 2020, when he was Immigration Minister in Boris Johnson's government, that actually there were potentially flaws in the plan that they enacted at the point at which we left the European Union. Now, he was speaking a few weeks ago to Tory members on a Zoom call in leaked audio that has been obtained by Sky News. Listen to what he said about the potential pitfalls and the flaws in the plan that the Tories had at that point.
Now, because we're out of the European Union now, we are out of the Dublin III regulations, and so we can't any longer rely on sending people back to the place where they first claimed asylum. When we did check it out, just before we exited the EU transitional arrangements on December the 31st, 2020, we did run some checks and found that about half the people crossing the Channel had claimed asylum previously elsewhere in Europe, in Germany, France, Italy, Spain, somewhere like that, and therefore could have been returned. But now we're out of Dublin, we can't do that, and that's why we need to have somewhere like Rwanda that we can send these people to as a deterrent.
Now, I think that's significant for two reasons. First of all, it does suggest that while in public, Conservative ministers are saying it was a great thing that they were leaving the EU, that they would take back control of our borders. You'll remember Boris Johnson saying that many times, but in private, it sounds like they were saying something different. Let's hear Chris Philp at the time, and you can just see the contrast in what he said then and what he said now.
Dublin regulations do have a number of constraints in them, which makes returning people who should be returned a little bit harder than we would like. Of course, come the 1st of January, we'll be outside of those Dublin regulations, and the United Kingdom can take a fresh approach.
So at the time, Chris Philp was saying it was good that we were leaving those bits of the EU, those arrangements that dealt with asylum seekers, but just a few weeks ago, he was saying it posed a potential problem. I think it's also surprising that Chris Philp was essentially saying that they only really looked at this in the weeks before Britain did finally fully leave the European Union in December 2020. Even though these issues had been extensively discussed, he almost makes out as if it was a last-minute surprise that they were going to struggle to return asylum seekers to their countries of origin or the places that they first claimed for asylum. Now, the Conservative Party, they have issued a statement. It's actually quite a lengthy one. It talks about how they fulfilled the promise to the British people of leaving the EU, how they did have plans, although it took some time to enact them, but also admitting that they need to go further. So the Tories sort of, they're inhabiting both admitting that they didn't do enough and saying that they did quite a lot in the same statement, but denying that they didn't have a plan, or that that's what Chris Philp was effectively saying. But nevertheless, embarrassing, I think, for this man, Chris Philp, because it reveals that we were hearing one thing at the time that Britain left the EU from ministers, but now we realise they were thinking something quite different.